Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome to a bonus Sunday video. It's the return of sea power, naval combat and the missile age, which I'm sure most of you are probably aware went into early access last week. The early access version of the game has way more features than the developer's version that I've been playing for the last couple of months, including, but not limited to, a whole bunch of new scenarios. And it's one of these new scenarios that I'm going to be testing out today. This is the prime chance scenario, and it involves escorting a pair of high-value units through the Arabian Gulf. The task force at our disposal to get this accomplished is fairly powerful, but it also has some severe limitations. The heart of the task force consists of the Tarawa-class landing ship, the Belleau Wood, named after the battle in France where the US Marine Corps first distinguished themselves in the First World War. It's reasonably well protected, armed with RIM 7 Sea Sparrows, which aren't quite a close-in missile system, but with a 10 nautical mile range may as well be. It's capable of carrying AV-8B Sea Harriers, although unfortunately today it doesn't actually have any embarked. It does, however, carry a complement of Cobra attack helicopter gunships. It's also missing its complement of Sea Griffins, but, well, given the nature of where we are, there isn't actually a submarine threat. And it's carrying a squadron of Chinooks, which are going to be more or less completely useless, although we might be able to get some use out of the Cobras given the nature of the threat in this area. The Iranian Republican Guard Navy have been known to send people out to attack shipping in rigid inflatable boats with RPG-7s, and the Cobras would make short work of those. As far as the rest of the escorts are concerned, we have a group of 4 of the always reliable Oliver Hazard Perry class frigates, the Reuben James, the Samuel B. Roberts, the Thatch and the McCluskey, and they're all backed up by the considerable firepower of the Belknap-class missile cruiser, the William H. Stanley. The Stanley definitely has most of the anti-air striking power in this task force. It's armed with the RIM-2F Sea Terrier missiles, which can not only take an air target out at a range of 40 nautical miles, but compared to the Oliver Hazard Perry's single missile launcher system, an ability to track and control 2 missiles at the same time, the Belknap has 2 double missile rail systems and can track and engage 4 targets at the same time. And this small but powerful surface action group is not the only arrow in our quiver. Far to the southwest, we also have the Los Angeles class Flight 1 hunter killer, the USS Philadelphia. Now, I don't anticipate having to use her weapons on anything, which include Mark 48 torpedoes and Harpoon missiles, but it's nice to have them and not need them, rather than need them and not have them. But what I do anticipate needing her for is for surveillance. So we're going to pop up the periscope depth. We're definitely not going to be radiating on radar, but I am 100% going to pop the ESM mast up as soon as we're at periscope depth and just listen out for any traffic on the electromagnetic spectrum. Basically, the Philadelphia is going to be, well, not so much the eyes, but definitely the ears of my force. Oh, meanwhile, the rest of the task force has just picked up and positively identified as hostile a bunch of air contacts. So let's go and have a look. Well, actually, let's get the ESM mast up first, because we're not in any rush. They're at least 100 kilometers out. We at periscope depth? Yes, we are. Okay. Let's get that mast up and gather as much intelligence as possible. Where is it? There we go.
Raise the ESM mast.
And there it is.
New air. Contact detected. Bandits.
Oh, would you look at that. The second we raised the Philadelphia's ESM mast, we instantly picked up another airborne radar. So anyway, back to the main force. As I said, this is a powerful task force, but it's not without its limitations, as I found out when I thought, well, we're under air threat, let's get some Harriers up, surely. But we don't have any. And also the AV-8B, they're not like the Sea Harriers, the FRS-2s that the Royal Navy used to operate, which were interceptors and could carry the AMRAAM missile. The Marine Corps Harriers are more like the Royal Air Force's Harriers, which are strike aircraft, and they do carry air-to-air missiles, but purely for self-defense. I mean, they're sidewinders. So even if we had the Harriers embarked, there would not have been an awful lot of use. See, this is the main limitation of this task force. We've got no air cover. We've got lots of air defences, Although the majority of the air defences only have like a 10 or a 20 nautical mile range, with the exception of the RIM 2 FC Terriers carried by the Belknap class William H. Stanley, which have a 40 nautical mile range. But if there are any air targets out there carrying weapons that have a range in excess of 40 nautical miles, they can basically keep launching, and all we can do is just defend ourselves. We can't actually intercept any air targets. The lack of any kind of air cover also presents another problem, because it means our detection range is limited to the radar horizon. Now, the radar horizon isn't quite the same thing as the physical, normal horizon that you can see from the deck of the ship. You mount your radars as high in the superstructure of the ship, at the top of the foremast and mainmast if possible, in order to give it the maximum possible detection range. And while that's not so much of an issue with an air search radar, because air targets tend to be flying above the horizon anyway, although you do still, I mean, this is naval combat in the missile age, and sea-skimming missiles are a thing, so you definitely do still want to have your air search radar as high in the superstructure as possible, but it's the surface search radar which is going to be the big limitation here, because while that surface search radar on the ships in the task force is going to be mounted high up in the superstructure, it's not going to allow us to see that much further than the actual physical horizon. And the bad guys do have airborne radar, and almost certainly know exactly where we are. So if there are any surface units out there running silent and just receiving telemetry from the airborne radars that we have already detected, they could sneak up to within missile launch range, and we wouldn't know about it until after they had locked on and launched their missiles. And that could be, well, suboptimal. So what can we do about that? Well, we're not completely without options, because while the Belleau Woods complement of embarked aircraft is pretty crap. Oh, Philadelphia's just picked up another EM emission. We'll check that out in a second. But the 4 Oliver Hazard Perrys in the task force do have their own helos, and those helos do have surface search radar. So we're not completely without options. Oh yeah, and the ESM contact that the Philly here has just picked up, it's heading right at us, and it's supersonic. It's travelling at 914 knots. I'm reasonably confident it's not an Airbus. These other contacts up to the north are travelling at a slightly more sedate speed of around 550 knots, which does match the cruising speed of something like an Airbus. But, well, we've identified their radar. We know exactly what they are by their EM emissions. They're F-5 Tigers, Iranian Air Force. And they're coming at us with what look like 250-pound bombs? Really? Well, I mean, you know, the Iranian Air Force, you can't fault their courage. Their intelligence, however... You're going after a surface action group consisting of guided missile frigates and guided missile cruisers. And you're doing it with bombs and rockets. Okay, it's your funeral. I mean, we've got weapon systems that can swat you out of the air from, well, starting at 40 nautical miles away. And you have to get to within a kilometre of these targets. These are actually the high value units that we're escorting in order to deploy your weapons. And of course, I've positioned the task force. Well, I didn't. It was pre-positioned, but the task force is positioned between any threat and the high-value units. So, good luck with that. You see, the thing is, after the Iranian Revolution in 1979, they did inherit a whole bunch of what were, at the time, fairly advanced military equipment. Not so much the F-5 Tigers, when Northrop manufactured those for export. They were, well, the principal attractions were that they were cheap and very easy and inexpensive to maintain. I'm not so much, however, worried about the threat that the F-5s pose themselves. I mean, these ones are armed with bombs. We can take care of them long before they get to within attack range. But they do have us lit up on radar. They are tracking us. And while I'd be extremely surprised if Iranian 1980s era F-5 Tigers had anything as sophisticated as data link, which means they're not going to be able to directly share targeting data with any other slightly more potently armed forces out there that I haven't detected yet, they are still tracking us and are entirely capable of pointing other things in the right direction. Other things that will almost certainly be on with something a little bit more dangerous than a wing full of 250-pound bombs. The Iranian Republican Guard Navy do have other things, ranging from, well, at the bottom end of the scale, a guy with an RPG-7 in a rigid inflatable boat. They have missile corvettes, they have missile fast attack craft, all the way up to frigates. So it would not pay to underestimate them, because those F5s are almost certainly providing some kind of tracking information. So in order to not get taken by surprise, I'm going to get some helicopters up. Fortunately, while disappointingly the Belleau Woods helicopters are not particularly useful, the Oliver Hazard Perry class guided missile frigates, and I've got 4 of them, each come with a very spacious hangar at the back that carries 2 SH-2 helicopters. I'm pretty sure the Belknap can launch one as well. So I've got at least 8 of these helicopters available, and they all have surface search radar. So I'm going to get 2 of these airborne and keep rotating them. They can probably... I'm not quite sure what the endurance is on an SH-2 when it's in the loiter. I think it's something like 2 hours, but rotating them isn't going to be a problem. I have plenty of helicopters to spare. And I would really prefer not to get surprised by something sneaking up on me that's been guided to the target by the air threats that we've identified. Not long afterwards, the first of these air contacts is, I think, now within missile range of the Reuben James, which is my easternmost radar picket. So we're going to engage with the SM-1s, and we can do this long before they get to within delivery range of their weapons. Now, an OHP, it only has a single launch rail mounted up in the bows of the ship, but it can control 2 missiles at once, which is handy because there are 2 air targets. Let's see how these SM-1s do. These aren't fire and forget missiles. You know, they're not active radar homers, they're semi-active radar homers, which means you have to keep the target lit up with your fire control radar, and the missile basically homes in on the radar reflection. It's looking pretty good. There it goes. Yeah, splash 1 bandit. Second missile. Let's see the intercept of the third. Yeah, we got the other one as well. Right, well, that's removed the threat of the F5 Tigers long before they could do anything offensive. I'm a bit concerned about these guys, though. These are the ones that are... I mean, the Philadelphia is still picking up their radar emissions, so we got a reasonably accurate estimate of their position, but the fact that they're supersonic... I mean, the F5 is a supersonic light fighter, technically. I'm not 100% sure on this, I could be wrong, but I believe with a full air-to-ground bomb load, it's not supersonic. It carries too much weight for that. But the F5s were coming in at a speed of 545 knots, and whatever this is, it's coming at a speed of nearly 1,000 knots. You see, as I said, after the 1979 revolution, the Iranians did inherit a lot of what were at the time very sophisticated military equipment, including, but not limited to, F-4 Phantoms and F-14 Tomcats. And while this may sound strange, I would much prefer if they were Tomcats rather than the much, much older F-4 Phantoms. The Philadelphia is still listening out on ESM. Let's have a quick look and see what we know about these guys. Based on their radar and emission signature, yep, it's F-14s. We can tell because of their airborne radar. So why was I happy to see that these were the much more modern and theoretically more capable F-14 Tomcats as opposed to the much older Vietnam War era F-4 Phantoms? Well, Tomcat's an interceptor. It's a great interceptor, but it has no air-to-surface role. Well, you could technically strafe a ground target with the guns, but nobody's going to waste a Tomcat on a strafing run. The F-4 Phantom, on the other hand, is a fighter bomber and can carry a nasty range of air-to-surface weapons. What the Tomcats are going to present a problem for, however, are the surface search radar patrols of these 2 SH-2 helicopters. So, yeah, because the Tomcat, as well as having an extremely powerful air search radar, I mean, seriously.
Bandits!
Iran still operates the Tomcats. They've run out of weapons for them years ago, but the radar still works, and they actually operate Tomcats as airborne early warning, a role for which they are surprisingly good. And of course, this is 1980s Iran, so these ones are definitely still armed. And that's going to be a problem for my surface search pickets, so I'm going to need to take steps to protect those helicopters. I do not know exactly what weapons those Tomcats are going to be armed with. They could have the AIM-54 Phoenix, which would be really bad news. I mean, the Phoenix is an amazing missile. It has a range of, I think, 120 kilometers. And it's a fire and forget missile. It's an active radar homer. Once it leaves the launch rail, it's somebody else's problem. You no longer have to guide it to the target. So just the threat of those Tomcats out there means I have to secure my surface search radar and take steps to protect those helicopters, which means I'm effectively blind to anything beyond the radar horizon. And the Tomcats, you can guarantee, are sharing tracking data with anything else out there on the surface. So while, again, it's kind of like the same situation with the F-5s. The Tomcats are no actual threat to my surface vessels. The F-5s, well, technically were because they were carrying bombs, but I was easily capable of taking them down long before they got to within attack range. But it's the tracking information and the fact that they are forcing me to turn off my surface search radars and get those helicopters down on the deck to avoid getting shot down. So there's almost certainly something else out there sneaking up on me that I don't know about. And as long as I have to keep turning my surface search radars off and getting the surface search helicopters down to the deck level to avoid getting shot down, I'm not going to know what it is. The thing about those AIM-54 Phoenix missiles, I mean, I know the Iranians had them. Like I said, they did inherit a stock after the revolution. Although, at the point where this scenario is set, 1987, was the point when the Iranian stocks of the Phoenix missile were at their lowest. They only had about 50 operational missiles left. The thing is, they only need 2. And the Tomcat can carry up to 6. And there's 2 of them. So that's a lot of missiles. Ironically, in US Navy service, the AIM-54, despite being an extremely capable missile, has never actually shot anything down. In fact, I think it's only ever been fired in anger 3 times. And it's never hit anything, although the first 2 launches were down to equipment failures rather than anything, specifically wrong with the system itself. But the relative lack of success of, well, there's nothing relative about it. It's been fired in anger 3 times and it's never shot anything down. The complete and total lack of success of the AIM-54 Phoenix missile system, it's not really down to any kind of limitations of the equipment itself. It's due to the fact that throughout almost the entire period that it's been in service with the US Navy, the Tomcats carrying them have been hamstrung by their rules of engagement, which often require them to get visual ID and confirm a hostile target before being allowed to fire, or waiting until they've been fired upon first. So if you've got a weapon system that can reach out and touch you at a range of 120 kilometers, but you have to get an eyeball on the target before you're allowed to pull the trigger, well, at that point you may as well use a Sidewinder. So the complete lack of success of the AIM-54 was nothing to do with the AIM-54 as a missile system, but everything to do with the rules of engagement that the US naval aviators flying the Tomcats that were loaded with AIM-54s were forced to operate under. In an effort to mitigate this, the US Navy did fit their Tomcats with extremely powerful and long-range television cameras, which would allow you to get a positive ID on a target in ranges far in excess of the old Mark 1 eyeball, but still not 120 kilometers. And by the time the pilot was able to get an ID on a target using the television cameras, well, at that point, you may as well engage them with an AIM-120 AMRAAM. So I still don't know exactly what these Tomcats are armed with. But I will know as soon as they launch missiles. Because if they launch missiles from 120 kilometers away, they're AIM-54s. So far, nothing. Yeah, I think you need to get down to the deck, Sonny Jim, and turn those radars off, because they are definitely going for my helicopters. I mean, they can't go for anything else. They don't have air-to-surface weapons. Yep, they're being tracked. Somebody's got a radar lock on one of the helicopters.
Roger. Turn 2.
And there's the missile launch. Yep, they're Phoenixes. That, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is the M54 Phoenix, which means these guys are in the shit. Oh, this is going to be close. Can I shoot the Phoenixes down though? That's the question. I'm not sure I can. I mean, in theory, it should be possible. Well, those two helicopters have just gone to brown alert. They're both being tracked, they're both locked up, and they both have incoming missiles. So the red ring that you can see there is the maximum effective range of the USS Thatcher's SM-1 surface-to-air missiles. Oh, I don't even know if I can shoot down a Phoenix. I'm certainly going to have a try. Wow. Can you not get down lower than that, faster than that? Oh, man. The Phoenix is a fast missile as well. I mean, technically they're inside engagement range. But nope. Nope. I can track them, but I can't lock them up. So, it's down to the helicopter pilots. Man, that thing's getting awfully close. Here it comes. Where's the helicopter? Oh, there it is. It missed. Whew. Okay. And the other one. Come on, boys. You've got this, I think. They're both still locked up. You can see the radar warning receiver indicator on the tactical display. So they're both still being tracked. And that one missed. And not by much. Here's my problem. Oh, and they've got more missiles away. Okay, well that's my immediate problem. I'll describe the overall problem once we figure out whether or not, and we're getting right down to the deck here by the way, 20 feet altitude. Radar's off, MCON in effect. They can keep launching these Phoenixes from 120 kilometers away. And I can't engage the Tomcats until they get to within at least 40 nautical miles. Now 40 nautical miles isn't the same as 40 kilometers. It's actually slightly more than 74 kilometers. So the range of the missiles on the Belknap, the Terriers, is actually, well, it's better than it sounds on paper. When you say 40 nautical miles, you think, well, it's not that good. Well, it's actually 74 kilometers, so yeah, it's not bad at all. Oh, this one's going to miss, I think. Yeah, it's going to miss. We're fine. Yeah, the getting down on the deck is a very, very good defense against an active radar homing missile, because they're designed to take out air targets. And there's not a lot of ground clutter to confuse the radar seeker on a target that's flying at an altitude of 10,000 feet. When you're this close to the deck, however, it makes life extremely interesting for a missile. Well, a heat seeker probably wouldn't have too many problems, but these aren't heat seekers. So, as long as I can stay down at this kind of altitude, I am reasonably confident that the helicopters will be okay. Here it goes. Oh, it's still bloody close, but they're good. The problem is that they are successfully keeping these helicopters both down on the deck, where the radar horizon is extremely limited, and I'm also being forced to turn the radars off in the first place to avoid them getting picked up. So even if they can't shoot these helicopters down, they're still effectively scoring mission kills, because they're preventing the helicopters from completing their mission, which is to give me early warning of any surface vessels sneaking up on me. They've launched, and we've successfully evaded 4 AIM-54 Phoenixes. And each Tomcat, and there are 2 of them, can carry 6. So they can't do this all day, but they don't have to do it all day. They just have to do it for long enough for whichever surface vessels are stalking the task force, because there are guaranteed to be surface vessels out here stalking the task force. They just have to do it for long enough to allow them to sneak up undetected, because I can't afford to get my surface search radars airborne and active with the Tomcat threat out there. They just have to do it for long enough for whoever is out there on the surface stalking me to get close enough to get their missiles away. And all the while, of course, those Tomcats are providing them with targeting information. So like I said, I have a fairly powerful surface action group here. But it definitely has its limitations. I've got no air cover. Where are the F-15s? Where's the bloody Air Force when you need them? Probably flying combat air patrol over the post exchange in Riyadh. You're on your own, boys. So I'm going to have to come up with a way of dealing with this. If these Tomcats are determined to shoot down these helicopters, maybe I can use the helicopters to sucker them into missile defense range. I have to make sure that the helicopters survive, of course. Technically I do have more helicopters, but, well, let's try to keep the ones that are currently airborne alive, shall we? Because I've got a choice. I can have surface search radar, or I can keep the helicopters alive. I can't do them both at the same time, as long as those Tomcats keep launching Phoenixes. I'm pretty sure. Oh, this is going to be close. Whoa. I'm pretty sure that the helicopters, as long as they're at 20 feet altitude with their emitters off, I'm pretty sure they're going to be okay. The chances of them getting hit by a Phoenix under these circumstances are very low, but they're not zero. So my plan, I'm going to keep popping them up to, well, certainly not 10,000 feet, but I'll pop them up to an altitude where they get lit up as targets by the Tomcats. And hopefully I can sucker these two Tomcats into continuing to pursue them. Hang on, what's that? It's probably a civilian airliner. But yes, what I want to try to do is, obviously I'm sending the helicopters west to the other side of the task force. And I'm trying to sucker these Tomcats into getting close enough that I can actually engage them with surface-to-air missiles. Which effectively means it's going to be down to the William H. Stanley, the Belknap-class guided missile cruiser, because its missiles have a 74-kilometre range. So, sometime later, I've repositioned the helos, I've dodged a few more missiles on the way, and those two Tomcats are about to cross to within my missile engagement range. So we're starting with the Reuben James because it's the closest. And it's at this point where I started to get seriously impressed with how Triassic have coded this game. Watch what the Tomcats do when I lock them up and launch missiles at them. Just got to wait for the Reuben James to actually get the missile onto the rail and make sure I do have my air search radar on, because weapons are tight. And we need to have weapons tight. Weapons tight means you can only engage targets that have been positively identified as hostile. This isn't the Wild West. I'm not trying to start an international incident. But regardless of your air defense orders, you must still have your radar on. These are semi-active radar homing missiles. I've been caught out like that before. I didn't realise I had MCON on. I was wondering why my ships weren't defending themselves. Yeah, you hadn't turned their radars on. So it always pays to double check. We're going to launch a couple of volleys with the William H. Stanley as well, because it has much more capable missiles, and it can also direct 4 of them at the same time, as opposed to the Oliver Hazard Perrys, which can only direct 2. It can only launch 1 at a time. But, well, Stanley here can launch 4 at a time and direct 4 at a time. But pay attention to what the Tomcats do. So the missiles are away. You can see the Reuben James has just gotten its second missile off the rail. We're just waiting for the William H. to do the same. But the SM-1s are away. Now they have a more limited range than the RIM 2s, but they're tracking the targets. But watch what the Tomcats are up to. They're doing a couple of things actually. Well, first they're dropping chaff. Notice them turning away. This is called a crank maneuver. You see, A missile doesn't burn its rocket propellant all the way to the target. It only burns its propellant for the first minute at most, and then it glides to the target. So if you can force it to shed delta V by maneuvering towards you, by widening the angle, it's called cranking, then you stand a much, much better chance of actually dodging the missile. And the other thing they're doing is turning around, lighting their afterburners and running away. If you look at the bottom of the screen there under the tactical display, you can see the speed of this SM-1. Look how the speed's decreasing. See, a lot of people think that a missile actually fires its rocket motor all the way to the target. It doesn't. It doesn't carry enough fuel for that. It builds up a lot of speed in the first 30 seconds or so, runs out of fuel, and then glides towards the target until it eventually runs out of velocity at its maximum range and self-destructs. And the Tomcats knew that. They dropped chaff, which, that's fairly standard. That's not impressive. But then they cranked, and then they lit afterburners and outran their pursuing missiles. That's amazing. I mean, it's bad news for me. Or specifically, it's extremely bad news for the helicopters, because they're going to have to play decoy again. I'm just going to have to try to sucker the Tomcats in closer by moving the helicopters even further to the west of the force, in order to ensure that when I do spring the missile trap on the Tomcats, they can't get out of range. But the fact that those Tomcats did, well, exactly what a real-life pilot would do in order to evade incoming missiles is pretty bloody impressive. I still need to shoot them down, though, and I'm starting to run out of chances, because I think at this point they've only got, maybe one Phoenix left each. Maybe two at the most, at the very most. I haven't been keeping precise track. Which means that, well, they're closing in for another attack run. This might be their last one, which means if I don't shoot them down now, well, they'll no longer be a threat to the helicopters, which is good for the helicopters. But they won't come in close again, trying to kill the helicopters, so they'll just lurk around comfortably outside of engagement range, continuing to track me with their airborne radars. So, I've moved the helicopters even further to the west, and I'm not going to start engaging until they are well within the SM-1 range of the Reuben James here, who is my easternmost radar picket. Because if they're inside the radar range, or rather the missile envelope of the Reuben James, they are absolutely 100% within the engagement range of the William H. Stanley. And they are having to get closer than 120 kilometers in order to launch these remaining AIM-54s at the helos, because the helos are so low to the deck, so they're having problems actually getting a target lock on them. But I'm going to let them get real close before we start engaging them with the SM-1s, which are the shorter range missiles carried by the Reuben James and the other OHPs. So Reuben James is engaging from comfortably within maximum range. I've got the game paused at the moment while I queue up the attacks. Switch to the USS Thatch. We're going to engage with the Thatch as well, and we're definitely engaging with the William H. Stanley, because from this close in, even on full afterburner, the Tomcats have no chance of outrunning the William H. Stanley's Rim 2Fs. So, you have your orders, boys. Missiles away. What's the NATO brevity code word for that? Because I know incoming missiles are vampires. You'd think, given what I used to do for a living, 22 years service in the Royal Navy, I should know this. But what everybody often fails to take into account is that what I actually did on board a warship, I worked in the ship's office, I wrote the checks. At action stations, I was the first aid team member. It might be Fox 1, actually, which is the same brevity code word that pilots use when they launch a semi-active radar homing missile. Honestly, I don't know. If you do know, and I'm sure somebody out there does, please feel free to let everybody know in the comments. But right now, fingers crossed. I mean, I don't think they're getting away this time. Not. Oh, check it out. Contact 7033. He's pulling a crank again. He's spoofed one of the SM-1s William H. Stanley's getting his Rim 2Fs away.
Track 7.
Oh, we've got one.
9 is history.
Yep. One F-14 shot down. And there's a Rim 2F closing in on the other one. I think we've got him, boys. Yep, splash 2. Gotcha.
033.
Still a couple of missiles in the air, but, well, it's not like I need to save them for a rainy day or anything. I needed to make absolutely sure we got both of those Tomcats. So now I can get my surface search helos airborne and get their emitters turned on again. And sure enough, not long afterwards, new surface contact detected. Where is it? Oh, that's awfully close. Picked up by the surface search radar of one of my SH2s. So let's have a look and see what we know about it. It's doing 16 knots. It is heading right at us. Medium radar cross section. Could be a frigate. Don't know for sure. Don't have enough to go on. So let's get some more information. Like I said, this isn't the Wild West. I am operating under rules of engagement. I can't just blast anything that looks suspicious. So, SH2 here is presumably the one that picked it up with the surface search radar.
New surface contact detected.
Oh, surface search radar just picked up another one. Alright, this is starting to look a little bit more suspicious. I mean, just one medium radar cross-section contact that happens to be sailing towards us at a speed of 16 knots could be anything. Two, both with the same radar cross-section, both sailing towards us. Well, it's not enough to classify them as hostile, but it definitely warrants further investigation, and I'm probably going to have to do it with this SH2 helo, because there's only so much you can actually get from a radar return. I'll tell you what is very suspicious though. The only information we're getting from them is their radar return. They're not broadcasting on any of their own emitters. We're not getting any ESM information. And we should be getting, at the very least, navigational radar. And the fact that they're running silent and not even using nav radar is starting to make it look awfully like they're trying to sneak up on somebody, isn't it? I'm still not quite ready to classify them as hostile though. I prefer to get a visual ID, which I should be able to get any time now because they're getting awfully close to that helicopter. Helo's loitering at 6,000 feet. And, oh, yeah, there we go.
034 is
In visual
classified.
range.
Hostile warship.
It's a hostile warship. Well, one of them is. Let's face it, the other one is too. What is this? Let's have a closer look. Kind of looks like a corvette of some description. I don't recognise it. Get the unit reference up and find out for sure. Bayandor class. That's a frigate? Really? It's a bit of a stretch. More importantly, what's it armed with? Okay, it's armed with 23mm ZSUs, so, I mean, that's a threat to the helo, but, well, not yet. The helo's at least 10 kilometres away, so we can keep an up. But the fact that, really, this is it. This is a gun frigate. Well, it's probably a pair of gun frigates. There may be a third out there we just haven't picked up a radar return from yet, but gun frigates against a convoy escorted by guided missile frigates and cruisers. Really? Well, I'm entirely happy to classify the other one as hostile now as well. It's just a question of how I want to dispose of them. Also, I should probably get that helicopter
Roger.
out there.
Turn 356.
Would be kind of embarrassing if I managed to get this guy shot down by a 23mm anti-aircraft gun after he successfully managed to dodge at least 5 AIM-54 Phoenixes. So how am I going to deal with these guys? Because I have multiple options at my disposal. I could actually launch a flight of Cobra gunships from the USS Belleau Wood.
7034.
And they'd probably be able to deal with these guys without taking any casualties, but, well, the chances of one of them getting shot down are not zero. And I don't need to take the risk, because these guys all have harpoons. So, Reuben James here is
Bulldog away. Track.
just loaded a harpoon onto the missile launch rail. The Oliver Hazard Perrys launched their SM-1s and their harpoons from the same rail. So that's almost certainly one of the frigates dealt with. I mean, there's no such thing as a guaranteed kill, but realistically, these Bayandor class frigates, they've got chaff, they've got 23mm, 40mm, and presumably the Mark whatever the gun is on the front is a 5-inch. They're not shooting down a harpoon.
Track 7035.
And since I know what weapons they have... Oh, there it is.
70. Roger. Turn.
Yeah, the other one has now been visually identified as a hostile target, which means I can get the helo out of there. I mean, I was 98% sure that the second contact was also hostile.
7035.
But I don't want to start any international incidents. And since I knew what weapons they had, I knew what their engagement range was, and I knew how close I could get the helicopter safely to get that visual ID without being in any danger of being shot down, which means it's harpoon number 2 for victim number 2. And we can get the helo out of there. Now, there is no such thing as a guaranteed kill, but, well, they've got 23, 40 and possibly 5-inch guns and chaff. They ain't shooting a harpoon down. They would have to get astronomically lucky to do that. The chaff might spoof it. I mean, that's certainly possible. But even if that happens, I've got plenty more harpoons. So, realistically, there's no way these two are getting close enough to engage us with guns. It's just not going to happen. I mean, you know, the Iranians, you cannot fault their courage. Not too sure about their common sense though. Yeah, they've seen the missiles. They're trying to engage. There's no chance. None whatsoever. And they're so small. One harpoon should be enough to take them both out. Well, not both of them, but one harpoon each should be enough to take them both out. There goes the chaff. Harpoon's about to go into terminal guidance. There it goes. Popping up for the top-down attack. You are so dead, sunshine. Yep.
7034.
Harpoons make a real mess of, well, most things, but especially something as small as that. Second harpoon on the way. Ooh, secondary explosion. Yeah, he's dead. He's done. Second harpoon on the way for the next target. I really don't fancy his chances. Well, you know, they started it. It's difficult to feel sorry for them. There go the guns. When you hear the 23mm going off, you know he's really in the shit.
On station.
Swinging it around, trying to bring all the guns to bear. There's the rear turret. Well, I say turret, it's more of a gun mount. It's getting awfully close, isn't it? It's around about time for the 23mm to open up. Any second. There it goes. Oh, harpoons in terminal guidance, top-down attack. And there he... Oh, wow. Multiple secondary explosions. Yep, he's finished as well. Under normal circumstances, what you do now, once you're sure the area is safe, and I'm pretty sure the area is safe, is dispatch one of the frigates to go and pick up survivors / prisoners. But that sort of thing is outside the scope of sea power. Now, I was expecting to proceed further along the mission route and run into maybe some, well, the old proverbial Iranian Republican guardsman with an RPG-7 in a rigid inflatable boat. And I have to admit, I was rather looking forward to using the USS Belleau Wood's complement of Cobra helicopter gunships to deal with that particular threat. But, well, that's it. That was the threat. This mission is now effectively over, even though you can see the helo down to the southeast is still being lit up by somebody's tracking radar, which means this guy doesn't know he's there, he knows he's dead now. But that was it. So there is no longer anything preventing us from completing our convoy escort mission. Just to be on the safe side though, I continue to rotate my surface search patrols with the helicopters all the way to the exit point. But there was simply nothing left out there, either brave enough or dumb enough to come and have a go. And so that was a successful scenario completion. We not only got the high value units successfully to the exit point, and we didn't take a single casualty doing it, despite the barrage of AIM-54 Phoenixes fired at our extremely brave helicopter pilots. Very impressed with this game, particularly with how the enemy F-14 Tomcat pilots handled themselves. I had to go above and beyond the Call of Duty trying to sucker them into a missile trap. It was Yeah, what can I say? I am extremely impressed with this game. That's Sea Power, Naval Combat in the Missile Age. Available now, in early access, on Steam. Hope you all enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.